Hello and welcome to Nintendo Agenda. It's kind of hot up in my apartment, so I'm going to turn this fan off. I had the fan going. So this is just going to be one static image. I'm not going to go to websites in this video. I'm not going to go to a bunch of different images. So it's not going to be entertaining. You just listen to it in the background, as most of my videos are kind of like that anyway. I mean, there are pictures and blah, 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 but I'm kind of shoving this one out there as is with not much planning, and I'm kind of throwing everything together on it because originally my plan was that I thought that the next Switch, I'm coining it Switch Plus, Super Switch, Switch Pro, whatever you want to call it, but I think it's going to be called Switch Plus, as this picture implies that I drew up just moments before this video. I thought I was going to have enough time to do multiple videos on each aspect. I was going to leave like maybe the actual graphics and system on a chip discussion for one of the last videos, since we know the least about that. I was going to leave, pricing and the ultimate master plan with the Switch and all this other stuff. But I'm kind of going to throw it all in here now. Previously, I'd already done 3 videos about this topic. The first one being about the Joy-Cons. And I discussed, issues and ideas and just information about what I think is going to happen in the future with Joy-Cons and how they are now. Then I also talked about the dock, how whatever new system is coming, whether it's going to be a little bump, not even a bump, whether it's going to be a huge bump, next gen, whatever you want to call it, it's going to have a new dock in order to have 4K output. You can watch those 2 videos and get more information on those. I don't want to talk about those too much because I already have a feeling this video is going to be too long. And then the last video that I did, because it was a topic that was big, being discussed online at the time, was Bluetooth. How they had a system update for the current Switch that allowed Bluetooth audio, which nothing has come to fruition on that. I don't know if that's because this is just an update that they were just pushing out before the Switch Pro were to come out, or the Switch Plus, or whatever you want to call it. Or if this is something that they are going to add to the original Switch as well, but they just haven't implemented it yet. That's, again, a whole other video. I go in depth about that and Nintendo's history with voice chat and everything. Those are the 3 topics that I had already discussed in separate videos. This video, though, I'm going to talk about price. I was going to talk about more about their online and streaming and their shop and the potential of a virtual console. That's one of the rumors that's out there. I was going to talk about a family of systems, and then that it was going to be a tiered structure kind of thing. I think that's originally the plan all along. And then, of course, the master plan of that. I don't think that Switch is like, this is the current generation for Nintendo, and then we're just waiting this one out, weaning us off of this before they start a next gen. I don't think that they're, in my opinion, according to the plan, I think Iwata was setting forth that it was going to be a platform that was going to continue to exist. He made references to like Apple and Android, how they have platforms to buy games on phones, and that the phones just upgrade every few years. I mean, it's more likely for people to upgrade a new phone more often than maybe perhaps a new console, especially with plans that are out there and budget phones and hand-me-down stuff. When somebody in your family upgrades to a better phone, they give you your old phone, their old phone or whatever. That's, I think it's not about generations. It's not about starting the user base over. It's about continuing the user base as a platform. And I really think that that would be a smart way, a smart direction for Nintendo to go, because the competition would be doing this generational jump, and each time, they're making huge leaps, don't get me wrong, but diminishing returns and all that stuff. And this is stuff that Iwata had talked about before he passed on. Iwata was a brilliant man. I wanted to do a video just about him and, his moments before he passed on, and how he didn't want anybody to know that he was sick. And, we know the story. We were there as Nintendo fans. I mean, he helped plan with Niantic Pokemon Go, which is a phenom within a phenom of Pokemon, the largest franchise of anything ever, and then on top of that, it's a phenom amongst mobile games. So he helped plan that on his deathbed. He helped get things going for the Switch on his deathbed. I mean, the man was amazing. And somebody he went to school with is, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. I didn't even think I was going to be talking about this or starting off with this, but I do want to start off with this now that I'm talking about it, because I think it's really interesting. He, his friend, close friend, was, or still is, at least one of the top guys over at ARM. And if ARM was recently acquired by NVIDIA. And of course, Nintendo has a close relationship with NVIDIA. NVIDIA sees the dollar signs. And I'm sure Nintendo, some people will say, oh, it was a fluke because NVIDIA had a bunch of used or a bunch of chips that they couldn't use because the Shield wasn't selling, blah, blah, blah. This, I'm a negative person, but that's a really negative, like, let's call Nintendo doomed all the time kind of point of view. I think there was more to it than that. And I think it's going to be, I remember NVIDIA when they were first starting to talk about that, they were like, oh, this is going to go on for years. This is a planned relationship. And it wasn't just because the Switch started off really strong. I think just in general, it helps them overall in the mobile market, with their set-top box Shield market, with even in general with PC graphics cards. It helps them overall having more products out there to make money off of and to test the waters of stuff. And I mean, that's where we get into the system on a chip discussion. But anyways, ARM is a leading system on a chip or CPU, mobile CPU manufacturer and developer. And it's just amazing that they're now a part of NVIDIA. And one of the guys who's tops at ARM used to be best friends with Iwata. And now NVIDIA and Nintendo are together. And it's just it's one of those interesting kind of little factoids that a lot of people don't know. I mean, I don't know the whole depth of it, but it is certainly something for somebody who can go more in depth into it should look into and report to the rest of the internet, because I think it's really interesting stuff. So, and I was talking about what all the other individual videos that I was planning on making and starting to do. Before I talk about, because I already talked about how I wanted to make a video about price and about their online and about the family of systems, and I've already started to talk about the master plan, which is that I think that the Switch is just, it's not a current gen system and then there's going to be a next gen Switch, or they're going to go back to making only consoles, or they're going to split it back up and make consoles and portable. No. I mean, having a family of systems means that they are reaching multiple markets And the hybrid in itself means that it's reaching multiple markets because because you're buying one game, but you could play it portable or at home. I mean that's and it's in the name of the system too. So it's easy to market, it's easy to understand. Some people will say, again, the negative Nintendo is doomed sayers will say that the only reason it's selling is because it's portable. And it's like, well, it's not selling to the standards yet of their most successful portables. It'll get there. I believe it'll surpass that, especially if it has a longer lifespan. But the idea isn't just to have one in each household, it's to have multiple in each household. And this could include a family structure of there's hybrids for people who want to do both. There's portables only for maybe the kids or as the hand-me-down console or the lower budget entry console. And also possibly in the future a TV only console, which would be cheaper because it has no screen and doesn't have the portable functionality, but could be made more for those people who don't care about the portability, because there are some people who are like that. I thought that it was brilliant from the start, and I knew that it was going to be a success, unlike the Wii U, when I made prediction videos in the past and speculated in the past about Wii U and Project Cafe, and now this ended up being Project NX and going into the Switch. I was like, this is a hit, because I've been wanting them to do this for the longest time. It's really rough for them to support multiple platforms all at once. Having one platform that can reach multiple markets it's brilliant. And the consumer sees that too. And I guess the next thing that I want to talk about, because I've already gone off on tangents like I always do, is I want to talk about Switch's momentum overall. I'm going to list a couple of things that I don't necessarily agree with or that I'm not on board with, but these are things that people will say, the Nintendo is doomed crowd will say, or at least the people who might have some complaints already buying into the Switch. They will say it's underpowered and it's missing games and it's you have to pay for the online now, so that sucks, and that the online is bad. Labo, what the hell was that? There's been no price drop since it's launched, and then the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox they're going to kill it. Switch survived all of that, and still hasn't lost momentum. It's huge. And even now, like in the past, Nintendo, when everybody was telling them they need to make a Wii HD, and they were probably thinking, what's the next hook gonna be? That's another thing that I want to talk about in this video too. What could possibly be another hook that they add on to this hardware revision or next gen or however you want to label it? I think it's just going to be a big bump, but it may also have additional stuff. But getting away from the topic of momentum and how Nintendo can't be stopped, even with all of that and in the face of all of that, it's still selling like crazy. And especially in the homeland in Japan, which only garners them more Japanese support, which for Nintendo people like me, we like that kind of support. Yes, Western support, more of that would be better, and it certainly has gotten more of that than the Wii U ever could have hoped to, and even the Wii could have hoped to with its massive sales. It's just selling so well that that's the language that these companies speak, is money, and the user base is there and it's huge, and so they're going to bring the games, even if they don't seem to make sense to bring to the Nintendo platforms. They're going to bring them if they're smart. They're not going to leave the money on the table like they did with the Wii. Now, back in the Wii days, when everybody was crying for them to make a Wii HD, they took too long to do it, and that was because they had probably a plan for the Switch, but they also wanted to keep the Wii kind of moniker, not just moniker for marketing, but at that point the Wii had already kind of waned in momentum, and the Wii U was just there were so many mistakes that were made, and I'm not trying to talk about that right now. I'm just talking about how right now for the Switch, while it's riding high, this is the good time, the good opportunity to release a revision or an update, or if you want to call it next gen. To some people, it might end up being next gen for them because they either did not have a Switch to begin with, and they're like, I'm waiting until they get a more powerful one, or, oh man, this is a big jump between when I got my Switch and sold it, or it's collecting dust, or some garbage like that. Arguments that they have. Oh, this one's cool now. Well, you might be only saying that for silly reasons, but anyways, this is the time. 4 years going on 5 years in, or close to 5 years in, and this is a better time. Whereas with the Wii, they let it go stagnant too much near towards the end of it, and by the time the Wii U came, it was too late. And Wii U was meant to be a bigger jump and a next gen jump, and it was like, oh, we're going from standard definition to high definition. This is a big jump now. Plus, they added in all the, the two-screen gaming, and which, did not pan out the way that they planned. With this, all they have to do is continue what they're doing, but just make it better so that they can get more support, more games that the normal Switch might not be able to do, or can't do, or that publishers don't feel comfortable with doing on the regular Switch, making a physical game natively for it. All while adding features and not stifling the existing user base, because there's still opportunities for, current games to either, come out on the regular Switch but also have enhanced features for the Switch Plus, or Switch Plus exclusive games, which is a whole other topic too. That was I've got several videos worth of information to go over already. I think I'm making pretty good time though, because I'm covering a lot of this. I already talked about the momentum and how I think that this is a good time for them to start talking about this. And I thought that it had been better if they had already started to talk about this like at the beginning of the year and then launch in March of this year. But of course, maybe they weren't ready. And some would argue that maybe it's going to be March of next year. There's newer rumors, though, going around that it's going to be sooner than that. In fact, that's why I'm making this video sooner, because it's they may announce things before E3 so that developers can show off their Switch Plus or Switch enhanced games at E3 and not be held back. So that Nintendo can just be like, open the floodgates with that. And this is the perfect time, not just for hitting while hit the ground running with momentum of the current Switch, but also because they're staggering in the competition. I mean, there's you can say what you want about the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series S and X, whatever. They're next gen systems and they're good and whatever, blah blah blah. I'm not here to downplay them. I'm not. But there's an obvious struggle that they're having with supply and demand, and you can say, oh, it's because they're so hot and they're so in demand. Yes, but video games all over are hot and in demand. And oh, it's because of COVID. Well, if that's the case, then why is it that Nintendo is still doing that much better than the competition? Not just against PlayStation 4, but even against PlayStation 5 in the homeland and stuff, and Japan. You can argue this up and down, and that's not what I want to argue. I'm just talking about how this is a good time to release another system so that the current Switch doesn't start to wane. So that if like there's any kind of foothold that the PlayStation 5 eventually gets in user base amount, I'm not just talking about dollars made because it's an expensive system, so of course they're going to make more dollars. I'm not just talking about, support. I'm just talking about overall user base and then the foothold that they have on next generation and how that mind share, because that's that's something that's unfortunately very important in the video game business, and that's why it's so hard to predict, is mind share. People have this mind that, oh, this is more powerful, so screw this old thing, I'm going to throw it in the trash, or I'm going to sell this and buy the new thing, They see video games as an investment, and with a Switch coming out, or with Nintendo coming out with a new Switch that gives you more bang for your investment, then they're going to be like, oh, okay, so this is going to get more new games, and I still get all the old games, and this is more powerful, and I can't get a hold of a PlayStation 5 now, so might as well get this new Switch, and then I can give my old Switch. Again, this is a part of Nintendo's master plan of a family of systems, and having multiple Switches in each household so that they have a larger user base. And I mean, it's huge. It has huge potential, and I mean that can be said of any system, but with the Switch and Nintendo in general, that has always been a thing where Nintendo homes tend to own multiple systems per generation, whether they be competitor systems or having a Nintendo portable plus a Nintendo home console. But the added benefit now is that it's both, and that you don't have to choose one or the other, not only with the hardware but also with the software. You buy the software, you got it on the go or at home, And now when you got it at home with this newer system and you got a newer television that's 4K, boom, you can take more advantage of that. So, I mean, this is the right time. And them announcing it before E3 so that, that's not set in stone, of course. That could change. They could wait till after E3. All it comes down to is that when do they think that they can finish production and get units out on store shelves? Because they don't want say, oh, it's coming next year. They're not going to say that now. They don't want to kill the support and the sales of the current Switch. They want to say it like maybe a couple months before, and the rumors are that it's September or October. So June is a good time to say, hey, we're bringing out a new system. Then that's only like a couple months for the current Switch. It'll still sell, I believe, especially with the potential of the future, or people wanting multiple systems for their household. They're like, oh, I'll just get this now, start buying games, and then maybe some of those games will be more enhanced when I get the newer system later. Or now I know what the new system is and it's not good enough for me, or I can wait, I'll just get the cheaper one now, blah blah blah. That kind of I can't predict everybody's thought process on that, but certainly mind share is a big thing. And striking now, while the mind share is starting to get low for PlayStation and Xbox brands, in my opinion. I mean, more people are excited about PlayStation 4 still than they are about PlayStation 5. Yeah, PlayStation 5 is a topic of discussion, and I'm not saying that it's dead or anything. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that people can't get a hold of it. It's too expensive. They're happy with their PlayStation 4s. And it's just more of the same stuff, and there's nothing really exclusive on the PlayStation 5 right now that is a system seller that makes you have to have it, especially at gouged, scalper prices, So, what have I all talked about here? I have talked about Iwata's plan. I've talked about Switch's momentum. The rumors going on right now about the Switch are good, because let's not talk about specs. Let's not talk about how you might think that 4K is like a gimped, the AI is fake 4K, whatever you want to say about that. Some people are, I don't know if they're AMD fans, graphics fans, or if they're just so filled with anti-Nintendo that they can't see that there's a potential for something really good with DLSS, or if they just, are just poo-pooing on anything just to poo-poo on it. But other things besides upscaled 4K or native 4K or whatever, however strong this new system is going to be, there's other quality of life stuff these are things that people have been complaining about with the original Switch. They say, oh, there's no built-in Bluetooth, or, I can't use my Bluetooth headset. Boom. Supposedly that is going to be a thing right away with this new Switch. Will it trickle down to the old Switch? I would hope so, but maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maybe they'll go, oh, well, this is more for premium users, and we're going to have a premium price, and it's going to be a premium product, so they get Bluetooth and you don't. I don't know. Still plays the same games, so it's not like they're killing the old generation and to bring in the new one or whatever, which is another problem with mindshare is some people are going to think that. They're going to, oh, my old Switch is now useless because they're making a new one. No, don't think that way. That's not true at all. They're not going to ignore that gigantic user base of all those people who it'll be closing in on 90 to 100 million here in the next year or so. So yeah, they're not going to ignore that. The support is not going to just dry up for the old one in favor of the new one. I think that both will be supported until eventually the old one is phased out, and phased out not as in like, oh, this is PlayStation 4 going into PlayStation 5. No. Although you could make that kind of comparison, because a lot of the bigger games that are coming to PlayStation 5 are also coming to PlayStation 4, and it'll be like that with Nintendo, only you'll be buying one cartridge as opposed to two different discs in order to play them on both systems. But that's beside the point that I was getting at, which was more quality of life stuff. So a lot of people complain about the stand, that the kickstand on the Switch is very flimsy, not enough, and that's why so many different manufacturers who've made cases and who've made covers for the Switch have a built-in stand that's better. Supposedly, this new Switch is going to have a better built-in stand. And that's a quality of life thing that people have been clamoring for. I personally don't care because I don't use it I don't kickstand the system, and if I were, I'm glad that it's going to have a better kickstand for the new one as opposed to the old one, which is, I agree, is kind of flimsy. And then also having an Ethernet jack. Now this is something that I was talking about the new dock, and I believe I talked about it in the video about the dock, that it should have Ethernet built in. And this is a quality of life thing for the system that people have been asking for, because this is more of a discussion that I didn't realize was such a big thing until I started looking up stuff about it. But apparently, even though there's a 3.0 USB built into the current Switch dock, that all of the USB Ethernet dongles that are out there to hook up to your Ethernet are still only USB 2.0. So they're slower, basically. With a built-in one, hopefully, or at least it should be faster. No dongle, no added money that you have to spend to get it to hook up to a wired connection through Ethernet, and faster. And this is also important too. We don't know if this new dock will be sold separately. Will it be cheaper? Although it'll have more features, because it'll have, better HDMI, maybe better USB, Ethernet built in. Maybe it'll be, this, that, or the other. But will this old dock or the new dock work with the old system? And will it enhance the old system at all? I don't think it'll like make it as good as the Switch Plus or the Switch Pro by plugging it in. No, I don't think that. But I do think it'll be compatible, and with it having Ethernet built in, that's great. And on top of that, maybe the current switches that they're producing now of the Marico model, the 2019 model, will include this new dock, which would mean that it would look a little bit better on a 4K TV because it would have HDMI 2.0 or 2.1. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. Is it 2. Or is it 4.1? I can't remember. But the more up-to-date HDMI output, more up-to-date USB and the Ethernet, and maybe the built-in upscaler in the dock itself would help the old Switch. And if that's the case, that brings me to another topic with the online, which is the Ethernet. A lot of people are like, oh no, this is going to make my old Switch useless. And I've already talked about that earlier. But no, think about it. If they are restructuring their online and they add more games, some people are saying Xbox Game Pass. I don't necessarily believe that. I think that maybe there's something with NVIDIA GeForce, or what do they call that? Now Game or Game Now? I can't remember the name of it, but GeForce Now. NVIDIA has a network of games, PC games, that can be streamed to other devices that are, underpowered, like, say, the original Switch. And that's interesting because let's say you don't have the money to upgrade to the new Switch, but you have the new dock, or at least some way to get an Ethernet connection, or you have good enough Wi-Fi that you can stream these games. And maybe they might add a tier to the online where there's, the online that comes with the free NES and Super NES games, although some, that's not free, and just online play and things like Tetris 99 and Pac-Man 99 and a potential Donkey Kong 40 for the 40th anniversary, that kind of stuff. But then there's another tier that adds the ability to stream more advanced games that the system can't do natively. And then that way, those games, if they're made for the Switch Pro or the Switch Plus on cartridge, then they can also be streamed on the old non-Pro or non-Plus Switch system. So that's a potential thing. I know it's not an option for everybody, but it's better than nothing. And that's just something that's out there that's I think is a good idea. So I talked about it being a platform and not being separated in generations. Think like Android has, the KitKat and, all the different names that they gave their operating system for Android, and how they've upgraded that. And eventually, the lower ones that can only run on older hardware get phased out. I think it's going to be similar with the Switch. You could say the same thing about iPhones and how the older stuff just gets phased out. It's unfortunate, but you can't expect a launch Switch to last a full 10 years if that's the goal, is to make it last as long as possible. I mean, you could still play it, you can still play your old games or whatever, but the newer games obviously natively can't play on it if they're going to keep doing either little bumps or big bumps in hardware specs every couple of years, which is what they do with phones, which is what they do with computers, and to this scale, what they're doing with this hybrid console, which I think is better than making a whole new generation where they have to start all over and there's all the risk again. Now, some people will say, oh, well, that's going to hold back newer games because they also have to have compatibility with the older. It's not going to be like that forever. And there could also be packs that you could download and go, hey, I've got this new game, but I don't have a 4K TV, so I don't need the 4K pack, or I don't need the DLSS on it turned on, or I've got the older Switch, so I don't need that stuff, but I can still play, maybe a downgraded version or a streamed version of these newer games. That's all up for discussion, and maybe it makes it complicated, but certainly this next Switch will be backwards compatible with the old one, and future Switches going forward will be backwards compatible with all the old ones. That's just kind of a no-brainer, I think. So, then the next thing I wanted to talk about how, pricing, because of the momentum and because it's so good, I do think that they can get away with selling it for $400, especially with the way things are now. I wouldn't want it to be $400. I would rather it just be phased in, like America was phased in to replace Logan, where they changed the screen, they made the battery better, they made the chip process smaller and run cooler, and the battery lasts longer. And they just gave you those upgrades basically for free when you bought the system, and kept the price the same. I think that structure is still going to be there, but for a time, until they get rid of, or I shouldn't say get rid of, but until they phase out manufacturing and distributing and selling the Marico hardware, the ALA, which is what they're, could be the code name for it, Ada. Some people are saying, I think that's a little crazy, but we'll see. Whatever the new hardware is code named, either by chipset or by hardware in general, this Switch Plus, it will be phased in, and the pricing structure, depending on how much of a leap it is. OLED, I think at this point, instead of having a price drop, giving it an OLED screen could keep it at $299, because that would be like, oh, well, it doesn't get a price drop, but it has a better screen now, or a better battery life and runs cooler and yada yada yada. But on top of that, if it's going to have better hardware, a better dock, this built-in stuff for quality of life, Bluetooth, the new stand, the new dock with Ethernet, 4K, all that stuff, then yeah, to differentiate itself from the current Switch, it'll probably be $349 to $399. And depending on how big the jump is, if the jump is really big, I think it'll be $399. I think it'll be $400. If it's not as significant, then it'll be a $50 jump at $349, $350. And then as the old production of the Marico old Switches dry up, then eventually there'd be a good structure to then lower the price and let that take over as the current or main Switch, for another 2 to 4 years, and then boom, you have your added value for a while, and then after that you have a price drop. That's a good way to do it, in my opinion. So I'm thinking $349 because I don't know if it'll be a huge jump. If it's $399, I would hope that it would be a huge jump, and that they would, like by the middle or end of next year, that they would drop it to $349 or $299 as it replaces the current Switch hybrid. So, so that's where I'm talking about on price. What else am I talking about? What kind of chipset is it going to have? I talked about earlier, Ada. It was one of the rumors that it might have a core of Ada in it to help with, adding things like ray tracing. I know that's a buzzword. I don't care. But for some people, and probably a lot of developers and publishers out there, that could be a selling point on whether they're going to bring their game to the system or not. Oh, can it do ray tracing or whatever? Well, the current Switch can do ray tracing, not natively, but through streaming services, Control being a prime example of that, and Hitman was also on the streaming service too. So, the newer one should hopefully, at least be able to stream that. It would definitely be able to stream that if the old one can. But maybe it might have something like that in there. It's probably going to be a custom chip, and it's probably going to be something that Nintendo can get a hold of for cheap and in good supply. There's rumors abound that, Nintendo, the reason why they haven't already done this or announced it is because, everybody's having, I read about Ford and GM. They stopped production of, 2021 model of new trucks and cars because they don't have the chips for their computers in them. So they're like, well, why build this when we can't even get a hold of chips? Bluetooth chips have been a problem because everything is getting Bluetooth now, from phones to TVs to everything else. Computer, game systems, and even the things that attach to them on the other end, controllers, headphones, other accessories and peripherals and stuff. That's a thing. That may be more of a problem because there's so many more products that use that than, more cutting edge CPUs, GPUs, systems on a chip. But I think if they plan this right, and originally it might have been planned for March of this year or late last year, that they already have it in place, that they have enough stock to phase out the current Switch and bring in this new Switch. They talked about earlier this year in financial reports that they didn't know if they were going to meet the demand. And they were not talking about a new Switch, but they were talking about hefty hardware amounts, enough that would send the Switch over 100,000 or 100 million units by the end of next financial year, March of 2022. So that's a lot of units. So they're planning something, and they spent a lot of money on research and development. So I don't know. I don't know how advanced this new CPU, GPU system on a chip will be. I do know with ARM being added into NVIDIA, I do know with NVIDIA's relationship with Nintendo, and I do know that NVIDIA wanting to push this idea of DLSS. This is a feature that is not in PlayStation 5 or in Xbox Series S or X. This is something that makes a low-powered system be able to pump out higher visuals than it should, because it uses artificial intelligence to make things higher resolution from lower resolutions look better. I mean, that's just, NVIDIA has been wanting to do, or has been doing this with PC, doing this with Shield, doing this with other products, with AI upscaling from DLSS to DLSS 2.0. I would hope that it would be DLSS 2.0 because then you would get the most out of it, or 2.1 or whatever they're at by now. And in which case they would need a chip that would have, I believe they're called Turing cores, to be able to do that deep learning, super sampling, and AI, upscaling. So that is a thing, and I'm already at over 40 minutes on this. I guess some other ideas I just want to throw out there before is, like, what if Nintendo goes, okay, well, we're going to go for a little bump and then we're going to add a camera. That could be a possibility too. Maybe the bump that they're going to get is all in the dock, or a bigger part of it is in the dock for upscaling. It's not even DLSS. I would hope not, but the rumor is that it's going to be DLSS full 4K from that, blah blah blah, and that it's not just in the dock. It's going to have to be in the system too. That the dock is just It's just interpolating what the system is already pumping out and then upscaling from there to the HDMI, blah, blah, blah. I'm not like a super technical person, and that's why this is one of the last part of this video, and when I originally was planning this was going to be the last video that I talked about, because we still probably won't know specs. Even if they reveal it tomorrow, which they're not, it's going to be probably Tuesday next week at the earliest. Or maybe it'll be at E3 or shortly after E3. Who knows? We don't know. Maybe that's all bunk, and it's, I'm doing this video up ahead of time for naught. But what if they do something like that? And that is, some people coin the term Nintendo being Nintendo. I think a camera is possible, but then I'm sure the next thing that people would say is, what about video chat then? Oh boy, here we go again. Now they're behind because they don't have video chat built in, blah, 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 and all that other stuff. We'll see. I think if they were to add video, it's probably going to be to try to push AR like they did with 3DS. They tried to push a lot of things with 3DS. That was kind of crazy. Not just the 3D and not just AR, but things like Street Pass. And that's something I believe that they should add to the Switch. Street Pass. Add it. Just do it. That would be awesome. Another thing that I think that they should look into is VR. They've already dabbled in it a little bit, but I mean, the system is perfect for it. All you need is a head-mounted display. You stick it in there, especially with an OLED screen. The blacks are going to look a lot better and a lot deeper, because they're going to be basically those little pixels are going to be just off. So it's just going to be black. That's what it is. It's not like a lit up colored black pixel. It's going to be an off pixel. So it's just going to be dead black. And that's going to be good for that. You could argue the resolution is not going to be very good. I was going to make another video about the screen itself and talk about VR too. Things like Metroid Prime, imagine playing that as a VR game. Maybe that's why it's taken so long to make, And some people, it's going to get pushed to the next gen. I'm discussing with you, I don't think there's going to be generations anymore with Nintendo, or at least with the Switch. I think they're going to milk, you could say milk, or take advantage of, or keep the Switch family, or the platform of Switch going for as long as they can, and not out of desperation, but because it's just business-wise, it makes the most sense to do it that way. And consumer-wise, that's great because, and it's great for developers and publishers too, because they're like, oh man, we got a gigantic user base that we can take advantage of. So it's good for everybody all around. So VR would be something cool to look into. And it wouldn't take much. With other consoles, you have to buy a whole headset, you have to buy a whole setup, you have to buy new controllers. With the Switch, you've got the HD Rumble built in. You've got the screen built in. And you've got the portability built in. I know that when they talked about VR before, they said that they wanted to make it a social experience. Does that mean that they want to have multiple Switches? Everybody can experience VR together at the same time? Or was it something like, this person's going to have the Switch screen on their face, but you're going to be able to see what they see on the television? I don't know what they meant by that. We don't know. Certainly with the price point and the way that it's structured for controls, for the display, for all you would have to do is just get an HMD head-mounted display, which has been in Animal Crossing for the longest time. Do that. And that could be a really big selling point. It doesn't have to be super advanced visually. It just has to be able to handle the VR. Because visually, it's going to be a 720p screen. Maybe in the future, they might bring out a 1080p screen when the price and the heat and and the battery life gets better, or the screen technology gets better, that could be a thing too, and that'd be more for the virtual reality file person that really wants that kind of stuff, so that they have more dots per inch in front of their eyeballs. That's a thing. It's built in basically. All you'd have to do is just get something to strap to your head to make it work in the right games. Now, virtual reality, I didn't want to go off on this tangent here, but virtual reality, everybody always talks about, oh, it's the next thing. It's never gonna be the next thing until the content is there. The technology has been there. They've been lowering prices, and especially with the Switch, it'd be super low price in comparison to what everybody else is doing. I mean, it's been available for phones and strapping phones to your head for a while. It's not about that. It's about the content. It's just like 3D TVs. There was 3D Blu-ray content out there, but was there whole... I mean, I think there was even like a streaming station or a station on cable that did 3D content, but was it enough? No. I mean, there's plenty of HD content. There's plenty of old content, but there's not enough content for something like 3D, and certainly the hardware wasn't there. Like, not everybody had a 3D television in their home, so it just didn't happen. But everybody having a Switch in their home and having to buy like a $50 to $100, strap to basically strap it to their head, then boom, everybody's got VR. Then what is really going to make it take off is the content. So that's all I'm going to say about VR, and that's all I'm going to say about the little things that they could add as an extra hook to say, because they've said before, oh, we're not going to do a new system until we've got a new way to play games or something like that. It might not apply to this system, though, because this isn't really a new system. It's the same system, it's just beefed up. It'll play the same games, albeit some games may be exclusive as time goes on, as they phase out the older systems. But, hey. And last thing I guess I'm going to talk about is this picture that I made. I drawn a similar one in the Joy-Con video, but I just made a emblem. Instead of there being 2 dots for the Switch, there's 2 pluses, which is the D-pads, which would also address another one of the quality of life issues. Now, I'm not going to talk about Joy-Con drift because I made a whole video about that, okay? But having a D-pad in that prime position on your left hand, I'm not saying that it's going to replace the stick. No way am I saying that. But I am saying that is one of those quality of life things that people have been griping about. Man, I wish I had a D-pad. And then when you use the controller separately as a Joy-Con, it's as functional as a Super Nintendo controller, plus it's got a stick, plus it's got the motion controls, plus it's got, HD rumble. I mean, this is pretty advanced for a controller by itself, and then on top of that, making it, like the Joy-Cons are now, and bundling them together to make a fully functional controller with all the buttons, 2 sticks, and all that. I think it's brilliant, and I really wish they would have done this originally with the current Switch, but they might have thought that it was too busy. Years ago, before the Switch came out and it was just Project NX, I theorized about that too, and I wished it was something like that, where it could also be. They could do little cogs too. I mean, they've had patents for that, where you could switch out and make it a D-pad as opposed to a stick, and then that way, if a stick goes bad, you could always just take it out, try to repair it yourself, or take it somewhere to get it repaired, send it off to Nintendo. That's a lot better than sending off your whole Switch or your whole Joy-Con to them and then having them replace it, which, again, I didn't want to get into Joy-Con drift, but there you go. It could be replaceable cogs. I don't think that'll happen. That's more parts, and that's more possible problems, but who knows? Maybe that's going to be the one of the hooks for the new system. But I think more practically doing it to where there's a D-pad a stick and buttons all on the face of one Joy-Con is better. So, but that's just my idea. That's my speculation. This video is almost an hour long. I'm sorry if you found it boring. I just wanted to get all of this information out there, all of my thoughts out there before E3. This is not even about E3. It's not even about predictions for E3 because I could do another video on that. Although I'm gonna wait a while before I make another video because this was long. And this was covering all the stuff that I hadn't covered already. I'm sure I forgot something, but that I was going to do in multiple videos leading up to E3. But now that we know that it's a possibility that they could announce this Switch Plus, again, I'm calling it Switch Plus, before E3. Another thing to talk about, I guess, is the name Switch Plus. Last thing I'm going to talk about is they said that internally they had kicked around the idea of Super Switch. Of course, some people say Switch Pro, but that's more, to me, that's more of a PlayStation moniker, Pro, than it is a Nintendo moniker, although they do say Pro controllers. It could be some other name, like New Nintendo Switch or something like that. With Switch Plus, it's great, but the only downfall with that is that if they do bring out future Switch upgrades like this, another jump, continuing on with the family, are they going to call it Switch Plus Plus? Are they going to call it Switch, Plus 2? I mean, I don't know how they're going to structure that. I mean, with iPhone, they numbered them. With Samsung, there's numbers, but then there's also little, there's side things for their phones or computers or televisions and all that stuff, model numbers basically. So, I mean, that's something to take into consideration with the naming too. Because if they want to keep the Switch moniker and keep it as a platform and keep it going for a long time, then the name has to be set up in a way that it's going to be able to continue with it and not bring confusion over which version you have. But, I mean, Switch Plus for the time being, and then with the naming of the games as they move on to 64 gigabytes, and then the rest of the stuff is probably going to have to be downloaded, which means that the system is probably going to have more storage and definitely more capacity for, I like the idea of having multiple Switch cartridge slots and also multiple possibly SD card slots. But, I digress. I don't know how viable that is or if they would ever do something like that. I know that was something that they had wanted to do with DS and 3DS, but they didn't. Although that was smaller, they could do it with this bigger Switch. But boy, I'm going off on another tangent. But thanks for watching. And again, sorry this was so long. And I guess I'll see you next video. And I've already exasperated a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. So hopefully it'll be a while before, and by then we will have already seen. They may not, if they announce it, they'll be like, oh, there'll be more at E3, and these are our E3 plans. Or maybe they'll announce it and they'll go, well, you won't get more details until we get closer to launch, but just letting you know that this is coming. This is the visuals for the games. We're not going to give you any specs. We're not going to give you all the details. You know how secretive Nintendo is. They probably won't give all the details right away. But, we will be on top of it as far as speculating and ideas and for the future. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.